it's like, in today's era, developers are often sitting on a half, half a dozen would kind of be a lucky position to have. In many cases, developers have more than a dozen offers, even when we're starting to speak with them. Okay, and onboarding talent thus probably needs to be requires an altogether different approach. It's something that maybe most of the recruiters have not come across. So, what are some of the strategies and essentials that you think works for business at different scales in this particular problem statement?
All right. Great. Thanks for that kind of question. I think it is anybody's problem these days, um, um, and yes, I mean, 2022 is a year where we have seen, this unprecedented change which has happened in the industry, the Great Resignation, as they call it. Um, you know, so yeah, so I think, one is, the question is, first of all, the question is fairly broad. So, if I had to kind of answer that, we're kind of talking about an entire talent acquisition playbook out here. But I think some of the more important measures in this year has been that. So, obviously, there has been a tremendous amount of churn which has happened in the industry. It is necessary to understand what has actually happened. I think why has there been a significant kind of a move, the need to kind of move and all of that. I think overall, I mean, I think a lot of us, the entire workforce, especially on the technology side, and pretty much a lot of other industries as well, have in a pandemic area have been kind of working in a situation where overall work hours have kind of significantly extended. It's kind of safe to say that the average number of hours that an individual kind of works on, irrespective of being in technology or not, has kind of significantly kind of increased. Um, and in the name of productivity, so yes, obviously overall workforces have become more productive, but end of the day, people have kind of have reached a point of fatigue. They have felt that there is maybe a certain amount of change would allow them to kind of feel better. I think the only important thing in this kind of a situation is that I don't, as an industry, as a talent acquisition professional, it is necessary to understand what has been key drivers for people in terms of whatever roles that they are part of. What have been some of the key drivers as to why somebody decided to be a developer and what they're kind of doing and stuff like that. I think it has been necessary to kind of even more important in this period to kind of focus on basics. And everything in the linear process is something which is as important as it was at any given point in time. So yes, the opportunities are kind of multiple, but I think there is a larger focus because the number of opportunities have increased, because there's a significant amount of churn. Um, um, in terms of talent acquisition, we will not be able to solve it with volume. So for example, if you're trying to kind of scale up your teams, and usually in talent acquisition we call it offer acceptance rates and decline ratios and stuff like that. Um, there's only to a point that you can kind of go hacking metrics, and the solution is not going to be with respect to volume. The solution is going to be is to concentrating in each and every core basics. When I say core basics, everything with respect to um, um, few of the reasons, like yeah, you want to hire top talent out there in the industry, but it is we are constantly in the mode to kind of interview and assess people as to why they are right for the organization, but we very rarely try to answer as to why is the organization is the right choice for the individual in their career. And this is a conversation that needs to be had at every stage of conversation. It should be, it is an important theme. It's a different aspect whether it works or doesn't work, but at every stage of the conversation, whether it's a recruiter who's picking up the phone to have that conversation, needs to kind of go beyond screening and need to kind of give a much larger view of what the organization is kind of trying to solve. And we are in a fantastic stage in the industry where um, we are looking at multiple problem statements. We have multiple tech organizations, multiple startups looking at a variety of problem statements, something which was not existing about a few years back, let's say half a decade back. But we pretty much have use cases, businesses around multiple kind of use cases, multiple kind of business problem statements, and it's probably by far also the best time to grow and build, and it's even necessary to kind of bring in those kind of discuss about elements as to what is the larger picture as to what somebody kind of gets becomes a part of. um, so yeah, I think that should be a larger theme. Happy to kind of discuss into some of these intricate details if required, but largely I think that that is a more important aspect. If somebody's kind of choosing to work a few years of the life of their life, with an organization, there should be a significant amount of purpose attached to it than just a change. And the more that we define the purpose at every stage of our interaction with an individual, it makes more sense. So irrespective of the fact that it's not going to be necessary that thereon, I mean, it may feel it may become it may become like a natural process that you don't need to have 12 offers to choose one. And that's the only way to is to kind of if you have a great um, vision and you have a great problem statement, I think it needs to be kind of discussed very well and in detail, and how does the individual fit in that picture. Mudit, I think you may be on mute.
Yes, I was on mute. Yeah, thanks for nudging me for that. So, yeah, so I think this circles back to the very topic of being active in forums where these talent groups are flocking together, because that is when, as you mentioned, probably we as employers, as founders, as recruiters, can go and communicate our vision and mission in a manner where they can, try to start building that sense of purpose and that connection with our company. How much you align with this particular notion? Because this often also links with the idea of partnering with a lot of developer communities, a lot of partner ecosystems, which have a forte among a particular niche, maybe data scientists, maybe developers, or something like that. So yeah, so what do you think? Like, is this something that helps in the overall theme of things, or what's been your experience so far?
So I think the question, just to kind of shorten the question, I think what you believe is that the vision statement and the purpose of the organization largely stays, um, ends up being locked at a founder's level, and how do you translate that across the org? Is that the question?
Across the org and across the ecosystems out there, because if the developers do not know about it, they may not be able to relate to it right when they start talking to your recruiters. So how does that happen?
So I think again a very very fundamental change. I think it's not change. It's about first is realization that this is something which is this is a messaging which needs to be kind of consistent across. Talent acquisition professional obviously need to kind of at any given point in time should have a significant understanding of the business that they're into. Um, um, and a large there is certain amount of responsibility that the founders themselves have in terms of the right kind of messaging across the organization, in terms of what is the overall um, what is your north star goal, what is your moonshot goal, what is the organization going to look like in the next 5 years to 10 years, and what are you kind of doing at this point in time. So it kind of gives vision to people as to what they are going to be doing and how is it connected to that goal. Is the is the very natural human aspect of connecting yourself to something bigger. And that's by far the most important aspect. It's a natural need for human beings to be being part of the bigger picture. And if that is the if we know that that is something that is an important aspect, why not have a communication framework which allows you to do it? And it's not very difficult as such. A communication framework could be a team meeting, it could be a town hall, it could be a team huddle, where you're kind of, or it could be inviting few other functions into your team huddles to kind of see what is your overall, let's say it's a product function, then what is the product function kind of looking at in the next few months to the year. as such. So that gives a very good picture with respect to, and it is necessary for the individuals who are part of that conversation to pick up important elements in those conversations, and also kind of have conversations around this and make interviews and assessments more contextual in nature, where you're also kind of talking about some of these elements, and it's not just a recruiter's responsibility. It should be shouldered by everybody in the interviewing process, whether it's a developer, senior developer, an architect, or a engineering manager who may be there in the process. I'm talking about largely tech, to kind of talk about some of the problem statements that the organization would be kind of taking up, and uh, what's so great about it. Answer that question, in terms of what is the kind of complexity that they are kind of operating at, and give that introduction from early on. I don't think there's an issue in terms of discussing about some of the big bang goals that the organization is pursuing from an engineering standpoint, or from a product standpoint, or from a design principle standpoint. It is necessary to kind of make them part of the process. The other element is that, an interviewing process at any given point in time may work or may not work, in terms of selection of the individual. But it is necessary to kind of treat the individual as an employee of the organization already, and share information and talk about the overall goals of the organization in detail, and have peer level conversations. And only if you are able to kind of bring in a peer level comfort in your conversations, would the other person get comfortable to ask you more questions. A good, and any good interviewing process is also kind of a subset of as to how many questions or relevant questions were actually discussed in that conversation. So these are some of the elements which are necessary, and we need to kind of keep in mind is that everybody is a partner in the process, and start treating people as existing employees in terms of, if not all, some of the larger, more important or more complex problem statements that are the organizations facing, and what they could be related with, or what they could be working on.